Hello, hello, and welcome to the ABM Practitioners series presented by Mojo Media Labs. Super excited to be joined by Corrina today. As we have some guests joining in, go ahead and drop in the chat where you're joining us from, as is standard procedure for an event like this. Corrina, where are you joining in from?
I am joining from Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia. All right. I'm over in Indianapolis, and gotta say, I spent most of my time in Atlanta going through an airport.
Oh, yeah, there's so much more. And then a lot of people tend to go to Buckhead too, but I like to bring people more into the city. So like Decatur, Ponce City Market, there's tons. So next time you come back, just let me know and I'll take you to all the good spots.
I'm taking you up on that. So with that, we've had quite a few people already join in. So go ahead and drop in the chat where you're joining us from today. And if you've got specific questions for Corrina, she runs ABM over at Gong, and Gong is quite a hot company right now. So if you've got questions, we want to make sure that we get those answered as best we can. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into really that first question that we've got prepared, which is, how do you specifically leverage LinkedIn organic for ABM?
Sure, it's a great question, and one that I honestly get asked about quite a bit on LinkedIn as well from other practitioners and marketers. It's really key to know where your audience lives. I know we all know that. And then thankfully for Gong, our bread and butter is sales and marketers. So that is absolutely where the bulk of those B2B professionals are spending their time. But thinking about it from an organic perspective, a lot of people are not taking the time to kind of filter and connect with the different audience members at their top accounts. And that's something that I always encourage the entire buying committee. So on my end, right, like my SDRs, my AEs, my president, my CEO, I encourage everybody to connect with their peers on LinkedIn. It's going to help to start have that organic flow of content. So when your company is sharing something, or when you personally are sharing something, but then also just being mindful about, treating their own posts as like a forum of sorts. So engaging with it, interacting with it, providing helpful commentary, the same way you would look at like a Quora or a Reddit. Like you should see it the same way. That's really how you're going to build that, foster that community and build those relationships. So I'm always making sure to kind of keep tabs on what are they posting about, where are they also then replying to other people's posts. So kind of all starts with building those lists and building those connections. But yeah, I think it's a pretty underused tactic, but certainly if you know your audience is on there, it's a really great way to start building up those warming up those connections.
Absolutely. And I love the thought process of treat it like a forum, like a Quora or a Reddit, because that will then foster deeper relationships and communities. You said something that I find really interesting, of focus on connecting with your peers. So you're not encouraging your SDRs to go and connect with, other maybe marketers or people in finance, but it's connecting with other salespeople and encouraging other departments to then connect within their peer group. Is there a specific reason behind that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a more natural flow of, I think, how the process should go. I think that we've taken this like spray and pray tactic to an extreme on LinkedIn. And so people are really wary from maybe somebody of that title wanting to connect with an SVP of sales, for example. Like the radar is just going off in their head already. So when you're matching up those peers as you would for, other programs, like maybe other executive programs, just treat LinkedIn the same way. I'm often kind of pulled into conversations at Gong across different deals because they see that I'm connected with the CMO or director of product marketing, and then they'll pull me into the conversation, and it's just kind of helping to multi-thread. So yeah, I don't do it just for the sake of that end game of getting that meeting. Do it for the sake of building peers and like-minded relationships. So yeah, I do think that that's a much better approach than just requesting that your SDRs go and reach out to all C-level executives for a connection.
Yeah. And we've already gotten a question.
Awesome.
Do you do that through Gong and through your own, actually, Molly, I'm going to be honest. Could you clarify the question a little bit? Because I'm looking, the question reads, do you do that both through Gong and Corrina? So
I'm trying to decipher that too. Do you mean like, how do we use Gong to do that? Do you take this? Oh, totally.
Oh,
Yeah, 100%.
yes.
Yeah. No, the company page, I would say, like from an organic perspective, is not as effective anywhere near as much as your own personal or anyone's personal LinkedIn pages. So that's exactly what we're referring to. Yeah, is having those personas at your account connect with other personal pages across LinkedIn. Yeah, you got it, Molly.
And then we've got another question that came from Kelly. So it says, is it easier to engage with your audience organically on LinkedIn when your audience is your peers, which I think we've already said is yes, generally it's easier, but just to kind of to expound on that. What about a target audience that is not personally your peers? She's also an ABMer, and their audience or her audience is global enterprise leaders. So just kind of how do you approach that?
I love that Kelly asked that, because this is the first time in my career that I've sold to my peers. So I have actually built up my LinkedIn following, marketing and being a marketing leader with people that had nothing to do with my profession, procurement, sourcing, finance. So don't shy away from that. Like, people want to buy from other humans. So yes, ideally having that persona to persona is ideal. But if you're very familiar with your content, and as an ABM marketer, you would be, you're just there to serve and help them. So as long as you're consistently showing that and following through, and it's not becoming just like a spam pitch channel by that connection, then they're going to want to connect with you. And I really haven't lost a lot of following, like as I've changed different industries on my LinkedIn page. I'm still finding that people are finding my content helpful and relevant because it can span multiple industries, more often than not. So I would say, if that's the case, don't shy away from it, as long as you're leading with providing helpful and valuable information. And then as that grows, like, they're going to see 50 mutual connections that look just like them. So it's a good tactic to take, regardless of whether or not that's a peer-to-peer match as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So diving back into the specific peer-to-peer approach, because again, let's say, for example, in a previous job, I was working in the financial technology space. So how are you necessarily getting someone like a CFO on board to kind of facilitate some of these peer-to-peer connections? Because when I would send out connections to other CFOs, I'm not typically getting a connection acceptance as a marketing director.
It's tough, especially if those people at your own company aren't active. And I don't mean just like not active on LinkedIn. I mean, like, they're not attending leading industry events that their peers are, or they're not, participating in other podcasts or blogs. So the way I've approached that, because I have previously worked with a lot of people that weren't as accustomed to these platforms, I should say. And I, again, kind of the same way I would treat my prospective buyers, I treat my internal C-level, like my prospective buyers too. So I'm selling to them. So the way that I sell to get them on the platforms is I go out and I find opportunities for them to appear as like a guest blog author. A lot of these industry publications are begging for content, and it's a great way for them to then pitch your company some, selling opportunities later. So it's a win-win across all angles. And so what I've done is then I'll work with them or our content team to write up a 800-word blog, and I'm at least getting their name out there somewhere. So maybe when they do make that connection request, they can say, just did this topic with so-and-so publication, would love to know your thoughts. So it can be more labor intensive when they're not already actively engaged in communities and forums and what have you. But there's ways you can sell into your internal audience that's going to really stroke their back, and get them to want to play ball with you. So that's one way that I've been able to get over that hurdle.
I got to be honest, I hadn't even considered the idea of like starting with some other form of content.
Right.
I mean, everybody likes to speak if you're an executive, typically. I'm going to give the caveat. So I guess, are you how are you even identifying these are the mediums that they would feel comfortable starting with? Are you just asking, or are you, how do you identify that for them personally?
Yeah. Yeah, I do think there's a bit of building that relationship that you have to do, building that credibility yourself. I think too that it helps that it's, if it's a company like wide initiative. So if your CEO, for instance, is bought into wanting to broaden your brand by elevating your people, then that's a really great way for them to hit off some of their own objectives, right? Maybe that's something that becomes part of how these individuals move up the ladder at the job, is that they actively try or think outside the box about how they can help to provide more reach for their brand. So I would maybe take the angle of, what is the company's initiative for getting the word out there with their own C-level audience, or how are they looking to up level the visibility of their C-suite? There's probably initiatives too. So if you're VC backed or private equity, that's definitely something that these firms would want to have, is to elevate the executive team. So you can partner with them and figure out different opportunities there, or even just go to your HR team and say, hey, would love to know what are those extracurricular things that people can do, or what budget even do we have that can help people better prepare for public speaking opportunities or creative writing courses. So a plethora of ways, but you're thinking again about how can I make this about what the individual is getting out of this, so that they're going to want to partner with me for my end game. So that's like 3 things right off the bat, I think, of how you could approach just selling this internally at your company.
Yeah. And I'm just also curious. I mean, once you've kind of gotten that ball rolling with, maybe, for example, it could be blog content, or it could be speaking engagements. I mean, are you then taking that existing content and kind of repurposing it for them to say like, hey, we've got this existing blog content, I've turned it into a deck. That way, if you have a speaking engagement, you've got a deck already built to kind of lower that bar for them?
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of times, people aren't repurposing their own content enough, or even surveying their own audience enough. So you could even just take the content work and put it to your audience, poll your LinkedIn customers or your LinkedIn customer feed, or just send out a quick survey. Just what are the most burning top questions, and then have this person respond to it and give their take on it or their perspective. So yeah, to your point, it's not always like you're working with a blank slate. There's so many different opportunities for you to use what you already have and then have somebody else put their extra spin on it or extra flair. And a lot of times that does get their juices going a bit better, right? Like it helps them to think about structuring these different types of content and format. More is more. So yes. Always lead with giving them, from title options to your point, speaking notes to tweets to LinkedIn posts, give it all. And then that way they have everything they need to work with to start to figure out what is my own voice and what is my own perspective.
It really sounds like this strategy to some extent is, for lack of a better word, like building a thought leader. So that 100%. You can then...
And think about it, like some of your favorite brands, like how many thought leaders can you name off of those brands? Even at some of the biggest companies. When people talk to me about Gong, I get 1 or 2. I'm like, God, we've got a ton here, right? So it's you should have as many thought leaders as you can at your company. Just the leverage you can get for reach, how you can think about that from a networking perspective, interviewing perspective. So yeah.
So final question from me around kind of the topic of leveraging LinkedIn organic for ABM. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to go ahead and drop those in the Q&A or in the chat. But obviously Gong has a target account list. So I'm just curious, are you kind of giving that to the rest of your team and saying, hey, here are the accounts we're trying to break into, be intentional to connect with these specific accounts? Or are you just kind of saying, go build relationships amongst your peer group, and by the nature that we'll build enough relationships, we'll probably break into the accounts kind of naturally?
Yeah, I think that, for our bread and butter, which is really more of that SMB commercial audience, the latter approach is really solid there. But for ABM enterprise, which is what I work on here at Gong, we take a very targeted approach. And it is through so many different data points, but it's all tied back to what are our, growth initiatives by industry, by logo. And we pull in a lot of different data sources too. One of the things we do is UserGems is a company that tracks your past rating fans. So that was something even at the start of the year that we incorporate into our data. How, as these people are moving different jobs, how many of our key rating fans are actually going to these top accounts? And then we kind of tier them out a little bit, more ad hoc that way. But no, there's a very targeted approach. We are aligned across net new, customers, CS, SEs, ISRs, SDRs. So there is really tight alignment. And I think at this point where Gong is in its growth model, like we do have a pretty solid formula about who would make a great client for us, size of prize. But certainly I think the latter approach that you talked about would be better for something that is just kind of still, you're still trying to figure things out. You're still trying to learn and determine what is that key target audience for you.
Yeah, I love that. And we've actually gotten a couple of questions in here.
Okay.
So Lee gave just a bit of context around, it seems like there are more people switching over to the creator mode and that their preferred method is follow over connect. And he's just asking, I mean, in your situation, leveraging LinkedIn for ABM, are you leaning more into following from like presenting people the opportunity to follow you, or are you presenting connecting with you?
Sure. So I have a creator profile. So mine does default to follow, but I accept connection requests all the time. I will say that if you're trying to connect with that target persona, I would probably flatter them by following them and then continuously post on, whatever they're sharing and giving your thoughts and 2 cents, elevate their post, share it on your network, get your company to like it, like help build up their following. And then when they start to engage with you a bit more, then push for that connect request, right? Because that's going to benefit you later too, when you're starting to try and connect with other people and they see that, oh, wow, they're really connected with my peer group. So I would definitely take that approach. It's such a low lift on your end to do that follow. And again, like it's just starting with that. Yeah, it's starting with that flattering and building that relationship in a way that serves them, not so much you initially.
And I can just say, as someone that has had that happened to me, where people started to share my content a lot more frequently, and then will come back like 3 to 6 months later and ask for a conversation, I almost always have the conversation, just because at this point I feel like I know them and that they're actually advocates of my success.
100%. And why wouldn't you? I feel exactly the same way too. And and people are still doing that pitch slap connection request. So you will stand out if you take this other approach.
I've gotten 4 today. And sorry, I'm going to read the full context because there's a question at the end, but
okay.
So Kelly has asked, if I have relationships with the marketers at my target accounts and I want to feature their VP, then I may more easily get buy-in having a VP featured in partnerships with my company. Has that approach worked for anyone else? So it sounds like essentially starting with, for lack of a better word, not the decision maker, but maybe a key influencer, and working your way up to building the relationships with the decision makers and then eventually featuring the decision makers.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think that's a great way to go about it, especially if you have different content streams too, right? So like Mason, your company, you guys do podcasts for different personas, you do events for your different personas, you have partner channels. So there should be like a tier process for how you're thinking about getting to that big, end game of that VP being on a panel at your keynote, right? Start by getting to the decision or the people that are going to be maybe more the influencers or the end users, if you will, and start to tier that approach. I think too, some like large companies too, right? Like there's so much red tape to get somebody to be ultimately where you want to have that keynote position. I mean, you got to go through legal, you got to go through comms, like there's a lot of process. So you should start to feature some of those people at a smaller scale. Maybe it's like just collaborating on a LinkedIn post, or maybe they participate in a survey, right? Like it's that person, as an example, IT manager at AT&T. That didn't have to go through AT&T, comms, but you're building up that relationship within the company already, highlighting these people, featuring them. Ultimately, it'll be much easier for you to maybe get through that red tape or that big smoking gun later if you start to tier this process.
Yeah, I wish I had heard that 6 months ago when I was planning ABM-a-thon, because there was one partner that we were really, really excited about. And because we used the word sponsor, it had to go through legal, and legal declined it. But they were like, we're on board with everything else. We just can't technically be a sponsor. I was like, why didn't you tell me that 4 months ago when we were planning this?
Yeah, 100%. And also just another note too, like these smaller companies that are trying to get noticed and big, like get the VPs at those companies. Like the red tape hasn't formed there yet. So take a different angle, because and Mason, don't worry, like we've all been there.
So if there are other questions people have around kind of LinkedIn and ABM, feel free to drop those in the chat. But I'd love to go ahead and dive into, I mean, I feel like a lot of ABMers are kind of running ABM at, for lack of a better word, like medium, small size companies, and they're trying to move up market. But you're running ABM at Gong that has run Super Bowl commercials for 2 years in a row. I mean, you guys have a incredible brand. You've got numerous thought leaders. So I am curious, because I mean, we're running ABM over here at Mojo, and we're a smaller team. How have you seen, having run the gauntlet of ABM at smaller companies and Gong, how is your strategy different working at such a recognizable brand?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question, and I'm thinking about, because I've answered it a few different ways, and there's two different ways I can take this. While I've worked at smaller companies, our clients have been massive enterprise level companies. So I was coming into a company like Gong that is very commercial SMB with that enterprise level perspective. So in many ways, I had no idea the amount of knowledge and expertise that I was bringing to this company that has been selling to commercial level companies, right? We're expanding now this year. Like we have amazing logos, way before my time too, but now it's a initiative. We have departments, and I think that a lot of times, or at least I felt this way, I wasn't sure if I was ready for the shiny, everybody knows who Gong is, everybody mentions Gong, but I was more so. So I think what I've understood by selling into these companies my entire career is that it's complex, it's massive. There's so many things to consider when you're talking about the buying committee. You're talking about departments that historically marketers just don't spend a lot of time with unless they have to, which is like procurement. And I spent, 6 years selling to procurement and sourcing. They're huge for enterprise level companies. Finance, IT, spent many years selling to IT. A lot of these departments, like knowing the way they operate and think, I think a lot of companies that have had really great success landing a lot of logos. So like quantity versus like the, maybe not quality, but the name, the brand recognition. It's very common that those would get overlooked at those quantity logos, but they will not get looked over. So I guess I'm having a very long-winded way of saying that enterprise marketing, ABM, demand gen, regardless of the exact discipline, is very complex. And the more that if you are a marketer of any kind, are aware of that, the best equipped you will be to partner with sales, which that's where ABM really comes into play, is we are truly an extension of the deal team. And that knowledge that I've been able to transfer has bought me a ton of credibility with my sales team, because I am in their shoes, already knowing the roadblocks and hurdles we're going to face with these multitude of complex and very disciplined departments, which make up these very big enterprise logos. So the flip side of that too is I do get to have a little bit of fun, because we do Super Bowl commercials. And so I get to now take all of that really tedious, strenuous, thoughtful experience and get to have a little bit more fun with it. So maybe not exactly the way you wanted me to approach that question, but that's how it came to me in my brain, and wanted to authentically respond to it first that way. So happy to go in different directions too.
So for starters, with the brand of Gong, you can have some more fun. just because the other thing is, I don't remember who it was, but there was a post on LinkedIn that got a ton of traction from someone that didn't work at Gong. And they just said, like, I don't know what they're doing at Gong, but they look like they are having the time of their lives.
Right.
And like,
Yeah.
to have that brand reputation,
Yep.
you got to lean into that. That's incredible.
100%. And I've been following Gong since inception because I've been on LinkedIn for a while now, and I came across their post and I was like, this looks like nothing else I see on LinkedIn. And so they were very intentional about this brand being different. Blue and green and white were the initial like logo looks and colors. And they immediately went, no, everybody does that. And then now, of course, you guys know, pink and purple. So like we went directly the opposite of where B2B was. And we're still very much known for that and appreciated for that. And it helps. But it helps because it especially makes us so much more human. And that's ultimately what I think everybody's trying to get to. And I have taken that approach as much as I've been allowed at all these other companies is, how can I make this something that people want to do or experience? And that's typically lifting the veil of corporate persona ignite, like just be human. And that's what Gong has always been good at. And yeah, thankfully that still hasn't left us. Even when we did do the rebrand last year to be a little bit more appealing to enterprise, we still kept so much of that foundational uniqueness of Gong, which was bright, vibrant colors and loud and expressive and exciting, fun.
Yeah. So one other thing I want to touch on is, again, Gong, very recognizable sales and marketing space, but it sounds like they may not be as recognizable in like finance or procurement because different industry. And It sounds like your past experience of being able to still break into those specific departments has served you well at Gong. So I'm just curious, I mean, how are you creating campaigns to then educate potentially like finance or procurement on the value that Gong brings to a business? Because I think most marketing and sales people get it.
100%. And it's a very mindful company approach too, is this idea of new industries. And it largely came out of how we saw our own Gongsters using the tool, but also how other departments started to use and adopt the tool. So like staffing and HR was a big one. They were starting to use it in onboarding and, think about eliminating biases and what are those key words and phrases that led to somebody maybe ghosting or did we eliminate somebody from the process too soon because of our own line of questioning? So it's just very interesting how the product is so innovative that it lends to so many different use cases. And I'm a huge fan of always leading with the product for that, and that being a really big reason. So I'm always looking to have, because I've always worked predominantly in like SaaS or software, I'm always looking to see how can I show you versus telling you what we're going to do for you. So even just simple things like helping to automate a HR onboarding process, right? Like Gong is fabulous for that use case. So I'm going to show these other departments ways that, oh, I saw you just, onboarded 3 new AEs. Let me send you the top most viewed Gong calls for your business, right? So we're showing you how you can serve and do your job better with our solution. And of course, you can be creative with different types of ads that you then bring back to that or what have you. But I'm always looking to use the product itself because it's allowed us to break into other markets and showing that versus just telling you that.
Yeah. I mean, again, that makes so much sense within the context of Gong of showing the specific use cases for not just marketing and sales, but also across the business.
Yep. And you do have to be mindful, right? I mean, because if there's something that we have labeled in the tool that's only thinking about verbiage and vernacular for the sales audience, then you're going to have to get creative. Okay, how can I still do exactly that, but consider that those might be hindrances or misses, right? Because things have been built for that audience in particular. So yeah, always be, as simple as it sounds, try and put yourself in the situation of the person you're trying to convince, and what is going to be intuitive to them and what's not, and then make that thing that's not intuitive. Got
it. So we've got one other question just around LinkedIn, and then I want to dive into more of your partnership with sales. But So Alex asked, if you were trying to break into an account, are there methods on LinkedIn you use to help identify the buying committee at the accounts and the people/departments or roles who influence them? It's a great question.
I think a really underutilized tactic of LinkedIn Sales Navigator that I've noticed across different companies is the idea of team link. So having your list built, so like, let's just take the ABM approach. We call them here like N50. So let me tag my target accounts for N50, build that list. Let me tag all the people that are going to be key decision makers, influencers, etc. And then let me look at my Gongster roster and how many people are matched with those different personas at these different key accounts. That led, I can't even say just out of confidentiality, but that tactic alone helped open a door to a deal that we hadn't been able to break into for over a year. Wow. Massive opportunity, but just something that gets overlooked and underutilized. So if you have, again, why LinkedIn is so important that companies do adopt broadly. If you do have people at your, team link is awesome, Kelly. If you do have people at your company on LinkedIn using it, connecting, game changer right there. So that's a really great way to consider. Did that answer your question, Alex?
I think that's a great answer.
Okay.
The thing that I would also throw in, because I'm a big proponent of trying to figure out like how to do it without using any tools. I love doing things for free. If you connect with somebody, looking at people also looked at, it's typically showing you their team members.
Sure.
So you can start to, again, that's a free thing on LinkedIn. You can then connect across the team. Right. So again, your strategy is probably way more effective, but if you're looking to prove value to somebody, to say like, here's how we can use LinkedIn to break into an entire team, find the one person that you know of, and then connect and just kind of follow that trail of people that also looked at this profile.
I love that. That's so smart. And again, another thing that I don't think many people on LinkedIn are using at all. Yeah.
So moving on to your partnership with sales. Again, Gong, very much so, an incredible sales tool. So I'm curious, from a marketing perspective and an ABM perspective, how are you making sure that you're in lockstep with your sales team?
Yeah. My background actually is in education, and I'm actually a coach for aerial circus arts in my spare time. So I'm very wired into thinking like, how can I reach somebody? I don't assume that one method or one learning style is the only way to consume information. And I certainly don't think that once I've said it in one medium that it's resonated. So something that I tell everybody that is to just over communicate. There's just not such a thing as communicating too much, definitely with this audience too. There's a couple of different things I do. One, it's hard and it's tedious. I'm talking about like for my team alone, I probably have 100 AEs or so that are senior sellers down to like an SDR, and it's growing all the time. I intentionally find ways to one-on-one connect all the time. So if I come across an insight, I'm not going to just share it with my senior seller or my director of sales or my VP of sales. I'm also going to share that with the SDR with that account, because I want all of us to feel like we're speaking one language and have one goal that we're trying to achieve. So it's time consuming, but taking the time to send that one-on-one Slack message or catch up for 10 minutes on a Zoom is beneficial because you're building that trust. Second, I do find ways to simplify and distill information. So one thing that I think ABM on any marketing team is not given enough credit for is how we really do elevate all the rest of the marketing disciplines: product, content, social, paid. We are taking your hard work and we're sharing that to the people that are going to help really get that seen. So either seen with your buying audience or seen with senior leadership. And we're distilling it in a way that we know is going to resonate with sales, because they are inundated with stuff all the time. So it takes somebody that really knows how to reach them effectively. So another thing I do is I do that. And that becomes a monthly newsletter that I very simply have 3 sections, and it's what's new, what's working, what's next. And I'm highlighting something every month that I know can benefit them and make their lives easier. And I was so thrilled that I'm starting to see like the fruits of my labor for that more and more. And it takes time. And it's not something that anybody's ever asked me to do at any company, but it's something that I know, again, I'm doing something that's going to help them. So I have now built that trust and that credibility. So I now have the best partner that I could have, which is a partner in sales.
Yeah, I need to steal that personally. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So I just want to quickly reiterate, I mean, it's communicating in a variety of mediums. So that could be short video, Slack posts, variety of mediums. It is connecting one-on-one with different sellers.
Yeah.
And then it's also creating this little newsletter of what's new, what's working, and what's next. And I'm sure that all of that is catered to specifically what's new that's going to benefit sales, what's working that's benefiting sales, and what's next that I anticipate will benefit sales. Exactly,
100%. And I also know that because that's like a combination of like a whole month, right? So that's their one-stop shop. But in the meantime, if something new is happening, like I don't know if you guys use LinkedIn voice messages or voice memos. If you do or you don't, I highly recommend it. You can only do it through the mobile app, but it's in LinkedIn messages and you'll see a little microphone. You click, you record your message. It's great for a lot of reasons. One, nobody's really doing it. Two, it forces you to get your message concise because it's only a 1 minute, so 60 seconds. And it stands out, right? Like there's like this appeal of like, what is this? Like, I've never seen this. Of course I'm going to click on this. And so rather than just telling my reps that this feature is new and cool, I just showed them. So I took the time, and trust me, it was time consuming, but I had a Friday where I didn't have a bunch of meetings and I was excited about this feature. It was working for me. So I wanted to share it with them. And I sent them all voice messages. And that got their attention. Now they won't just ignore that Slack message I sent. They actually are consuming it and they're understanding it. So it's very like unsung praises, right? Like my bosses don't really know I do this, but it's something that I know is really going to help and benefit the team, and has there's a long-term play here.
How many salespeople do you have?
Yeah, so I mean, the AEs alone, I think we're at like 40, and then the inside sales reps, it's like, yeah, I mean, it took time. It took like I don't want to say how long it took, but I had the time, and I mean, the response was huge. Like I got well over 50% of people responding back to me. So it just shows you that a lot of times, I forget who quoted this, but you have to do the unscalable before you can scale. And even a company like Gong, there's a lot that we can be doing still. So even though we've quote unquote made it, like there's still so much we can do, and we always need to be ahead of the curve. So I'm not going to just sit back in my comfy chair just because I'm working for this badass brand. Like I'm still going to try and do my best. And sometimes that means doing the unscalable.
I love that. We've got another question from Kelly. So one, I just want to say thank you, Kelly. You are keeping the chat and the questions lively. But
yeah, Kelly, make sure we connect, by the way.
Yeah, like I want to hop on a call with you later. Anyway, so much richness that you are sharing today, but my excitement is now overwhelming me. Corrina, you are killing it. What is the one thing you find has had the biggest impact? If I could only start doing one Corrina-ism today, what would it be?
Oh God. Okay. If you want like a real answer here. I really do care about the people I interact with. And I care about every person that takes the time to comment on my post, every salesperson that's struggling to hit their quota, every new SDR that's new to the field. Like I truly care. And I want to be helpful to them, because that's just like, that's what makes me feel fulfilled in life. So find whatever you really do enjoy and care about and implement it into your job. It doesn't have to align to a channel or a tactic. Like once you find that thing that like really gets you going, like Kelly, like what you really like, I'm getting you excited right now, like find what's making you excited about it and lean into that completely. And it won't feel like work. It won't feel tedious. It'll feel so natural. And even when you're not in the best of situations, the best of environments or jobs or what have you, like that's what's going to get you through. So maybe a little too philosophical, but truly what I mean.
God, I love that. Okay, I want to go ahead and wrap up on partnership with sales, because we're kind of already leaning into advice on a pilot campaign, but
oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah.
So as far as, I mean, partnership, you're clearly doing the one-to-one connection. I mean, your salespeople know you and they know you care.
Yeah.
So I love for lack of a better word, like the one-off, like, hey, here's a cool tactic you could use to break in, like sending a voice memo. I mean, how are you, I guess, incorporating the sales team in more comprehensive campaign planning for ABM to where they're bought in?
Yeah. I think this idea of like pilot campaigns is so underutilized, and it's because it takes a little bit more pre-work. I think when we think about just like doing something in small batches or just ourselves, like we think we can just get it done quicker or done better. But the pilot campaign is really taking a holistic approach. And how is this one piece of technology or this campaign or this tactic going to affect all these other people that are eventually going to have to interact with if we do get that end goal in mind? So I like to identify people with different leaders, or even just self-select and then ask for permission. Like, who are people that are like, they're hungry, they're driven, like they're always eager to try new things. And I try and always find partnerships with them. So if I'm going to launch a new piece of technology that's going to impact me, impact sales, impact CS, I'm going to nominate people to pilot it with me. And they're going to get approval from their managers that they have the time to be spending on this, learning it, et cetera. But what I've found is that you now have like an amplifier for that one thing, where now I have people that aren't just speaking the way I speak, but they're speaking the way they speak, which is going to resonate with their broader team, or the broader group that they serve. And they're getting a lot of learnings out of it as well. And they feel like they have a seat at the table. So you're just by nature, even if it's not going to be what you thought it would be, building so much more credibility and respect. And so I think that you're going to have people want to buy in when there's a little bit more stake in it for them too. And I get it, like everybody's so inundated with stuff to do, and trust me, at Gong, that is no exception. So we're constantly not just thinking about ways to like, I think a lot of people go to contests or spiffs. You have to really think about deeper than that. Like, is this going to make their day-to-day easier? Is this going to help them get to that promotion path easier? Is this going to give them more visibility in the company? Is this going to help them get that speaking opportunity? So yeah, I guess a more holistic approach, and I'm kind of rambling here, so I'm going to stop, but it's the better way to think about it versus the simple way, which is like, oh, I'm just going to get it launched, and whoever gets X amount of these gets a $500 gift card, as an example.
Yeah. And I mean, even in selecting a limited group, there's a sense of pride.
Scarcity, that too. Yeah.
And yeah, scarcity of like, okay, I was selected for this. I should invest my time and my energy into this. So there's a higher level of buy-in. But that also, when it works, then you've got essentially like internal evangelists already around a program that then go back, and you can build internal little case studies on the success of what you're able to generate to get more buy-in. That's genius.
Yeah. One thing, just as a quick example, we have a series here called Gong on Gong, and it's now public. So if you search for that, you can see it. And again, I'm a huge fan of leading with your product. So we had a really great event that we recorded on Gong, and we wanted to share it. And rather than doing the standard templates, sales templates, so like a cadence, if you will, I wanted our SDR team to actually take the initiative to share through the Gong platform itself, so that when these executives do see this email, it's very Gong specific and not something that might be captured by spam filters or what have you. So there's a lot of like angles played into this, but I also knew that it was leading to one of our company initiatives, which is to do more with the product ourselves, lead more with the product. And so I didn't have mass participation, but I had enough to have some success stories. And so I flipped it around, then nominated this to the Gong, which it got accepted. And so now this program that was seemed so new and so foreign that people didn't want to spend the extra time to do because they had an easier way that they were used to. Now they see like, oh, there's like broader impact here. It wasn't just about me hitting my quota this month or getting marketing's event out the door. Like there's bigger things happening here. So I'm always trying to think about ways where like that campaign to me is not done because now I got this spotlight. So now I'm going to have greater success when I try and do something like that again. So just as like an example of the longevity or of a pilot, if you will.
I love that. Corrina, before I close us out, if there's any other questions, go ahead and throw those in the chat. Otherwise, I just want to kind of pose the question of, I mean, we've already talked through one Corrina-ism, which was a great closing question. So
yeah, you should add that. That's a good, because it really got to me. Like, if it was Kelly, I think she asked, like she really got to me, and you can even see, I think I choked up a bit. Like, and then I really answer authentically. Like, I love that too. I'm probably going to steal that.
Yeah. So if there's no other questions, I don't know how we could top the Corrina-ism, because I want to ask like, what's another Corrina-ism? But I mean, essentially, I mean, if people are looking at launching a pilot or are interested in maybe running with an ABM program, what is the one hurdle that you would kind of warn them against and say like, hey, watch out for this. This is probably something that you might struggle with.
Tying everything to revenue.
Okay.
So that is, unfortunately, I think where a lot of people get hung up with marketing in general is just tying all the success and the metrics to revenue. And with ABM, it is very much a long game, and it is a lot of testing, iteration, and learning. So find other ways to prove the success or even the not success. But if you're only measuring against pipeline created or number of meetings set, you're not setting yourself up for the best success to then try again. So think about all the different ways that you can communicate the value, and then just stay away from using jargons in the value statement. Show just plain as grass, like what did you use to benefit? And that could be traffic to the website increased with these verticals by X%, instead of we had X more MQLs. So just as an example.
Yeah, the best thing that I've ever done for my career was starting to report on marketing sourced revenue versus MQLs.
Yeah.
That seems to help a whole lot with getting buy-in.
Yeah.
Well, I really enjoyed our conversation. I think the people that joined live did as well. We're going to real quick go ahead and drop your LinkedIn in the chat. That way, if people want to connect with you, we can make it easy on them. And yeah, please connect with the both of us. We would love to continue to have conversations and engage moving forward. But thank you all for joining. This has been the second ABM Practitioner series. Corrina, thanks so much for joining today. Hope you all enjoyed.
Thanks, Mason. Thanks, everybody. So appreciate you all. Take care.
Bye.